Ele Toldot Yitzchak. They're the first 3 words of this week's Torah portion. And they are usually translated as, these are the generations that came forth from Isaac. This is where we are in the story. We are in the story of Isaac at this point. But the word that is translated as generations in Hebrew is Toldot. And that word in Hebrew is a little more ambivalent than just like one translation would give us. And in fact, there are possibilities to understand it, translate it a little bit differently. So some of the translation you can find is, instead of saying, these are the generations, these are the accomplishments of Isaac. Which is interesting how the Hebrew word can mean generations and accomplishments at the same time. One of the reasons I believe is because in biblical times, when you had generations, when you in fact were fruitful and multiplied, that was seen as great accomplishments. Ele Toldot Yitzchak, these are the accomplishments of Isaac. There's another translation, which actually is my favorite, that says these are the life stories of Isaac. It's also interesting how you can get the completely different understanding in English from what the Hebrew, the multidimensionality of Hebrew is really beautiful and powerful. And though Diana and I, when we were planning and plotting to have this themed Shabbat around irreverence and laughter, we actually were debating which Shabbat we were gonna do this, whether it was going to be December, November, January. We weren't sure. But then, the universe decides. We thought, we were going to do it just before Thanksgiving. It's a nice way to head towards the holiday. That was kind of one of the ways we were talking about that made us weigh on this Shabbat specifically. What we didn't know was that it was, which is what the universe wanted us to do, is to do this Shabbat about laughter, the week of the Torah portion that speaks of Yitzchak, of the life story of Isaac, because Isaac in Hebrew, Yitzchak, means laughter. That's his name. That's his name. Coincidence? I don't think so. I don't think so. But in Hebrew, when you give a kid a name, usually you also inscribe in his name kind of his destiny. And one wonders where in Isaac's life story is the manifestation, the expression of laughter. And if one wants to kind of figure out, we have to dive into Isaac's life story and see what do we know? What do we know about Isaac? What do we know if we look in Torah? What do we know about Isaac? So you look in Torah and what you find is nothing. There's so little written about Isaac, it's kind of mind-boggling. He seems to have been a very self-effacing child. He doesn't say much, he doesn't do much as a kid, really. We know nothing about him pretty much until that one major event in his early years where his father, which eventually will become one of the most traumatic moments of Isaac's life, his father decides to take him up this Mount Moriah and to kill him, to sacrifice him in the name of his God. And there we have some sense of who Isaac is, but after that, very little after that. Actually, the story completely ignores him and goes into a different direction until many, many turns of the Torah scroll later. One thing we eventually come to see about Isaac, or learn about Isaac, is that of all the patriarchs, he's the one, it says in Torah, with the longest lifespan. The longest lifespan. And if you know a little bit of the mentality or the way of thinking in biblical times, in ancient biblical times, when somebody has a lengthy lifespan, this is seen as a reward for having lived a life well lived, to to having a life that was well lived. So one wonders, what did Isaac do to deserve such an incredible reward, to have the longest lifespan of all the patriarchs? The way I see it is that Isaac is the quintessential second-generation immigrant. His father came to the promised land, to the new land, and he's the one who is going to dedicate his life, really, to kind of planting seeds in the land, to settle the land, to be in the promised land. And actually, the image of planting seeds is appropriate because Isaac is going to be a farmer. He's the only one of all the patriarchs. Actually, if you look, besides Abel, he's probably the only of the heroes of Torah to actually to become a farmer, to be a farmer. And so he's known for two things. He's known because, one, he's going to try to grow some food from the land. And two, and that's one of the things that Torah speaks at length about, when it speaks very little of Isaac, but in this case at length, describing him as a well digger. He digs wells, dozens of wells everywhere. And so we see that his life is almost the antithesis of Abraham, his father, who was a shepherd, really, of his son, Jacob, who also is going to be a shepherd, and his other son, his twin, Esau, who is a hunter. And he's kind of sandwiched there in the middle, working the land, making things grow and digging wells. So now we have a little bit more of an understanding of this kind of twisted personality that Isaac is. But where in that did we hear anything that has anything to do about laughter? Where is his name manifesting in his life? So our sages that jump in, and they say, Isaac's life stories are there to teach us. They are there to teach us about the fact that the deepest joy and the deepest life laughter comes paradoxically from the everyday, mundane work and toil that we do. They say, look, you could decide to be a warrior. You could go and conquer the open fields of the undiscovered whatever, right? You could make your life such an accomplishment that you would have your name written in the history books, or biographies will be written about you. And that's great, but that's a lot of ego boosting. And that's really a life that is meant for yourself. It doesn't really have a great impact on others. So the rabbis say, well, you can do the opposite. You can do the opposite. You can decide, and these are my words, to coast through life. You can decide to find the most meaningless and least challenging work that you can find and live a life of tranquility, content with whatever you have, without a lot of burden on your mind. And for the rabbis, that's a little bit of a waste. Actually, for the rabbis, that's a lot of waste. But they say if it is joy that you are looking for, if it is laughter that you are seeking, then you have to become a life farmer. You have to become a well digger. You have to live in your life and plow and seed and water and nurture and tend to your relationships, to the people you meet, to every encounter in your life, to every moment in your life, to make your life the most fertile that it can be. You have to seed seeds so that you can seed the future, a future that you can be proud of, a future that you can leave for the next generations, the Toldot that are coming. You have to work, and this is one of my favorite way of looking at it. You have to work in order to create something beautiful out of the harsh soil of your life. You have to work diligently, persistently, day in and day out, to create something beautiful out of the harsh soil of your life. It's one of my favorite teachings about Isaac. Now the mystics also, they jump in, they love this. They jump in on the other side of it. They said, you have to dig. You have to spend your life digging deeper and deeper below the surface of everyday consciousness to find within your heart the fountain of joy, the fountain of life, the divine fountain that is yearning to be tapped into at the center of your heart, at the center of your soul. Because there lie the life-giving waters of the divine presence within us, each and every one of us. And this is hard work. This is hard toil, You have to wake up early in the morning to get into the field of consciousness in your meditation practice. 6:15, and here you are. You have to commit day in and day out to work the field of awareness, to cultivate consciousness. You have to dig deeper and deeper into your own inner well, to live from the place where your divine being dwells. And this is our path. Our path, the Jewish path, our path is away from the limelight, away from the flash photography. Our path is in the silence of the unassuming beings that we are, working day in and day out to better ourselves, to better the world around us. To know that when we nurture ourselves, the people in our lives, people in our community, we are in fact seeding seeds of love and seeds of compassion for the rest of the world. And that, the Hasidic master tells us, that is what brings ineffable joy to our heart. That what brings great laughter at the soul level that vibrates within ourselves, like this belly laugh. Knowing the worthiness of every of our moments. That's the laughter of Issac, because that was his life. Our job is to awaken the Issac within us. The Issac within us. And that's what we're touching upon this Shabbat, bringing laughter into this space, bringing laughter as part of our practice of Shabbat, to poke fun at ourselves, to not take ourselves so seriously, because there's so much happening in the world, especially right now, that we need to find that place where we can take a little bit of distance, and we can see that life with a capital L is bigger, vaster, ineffably vaster than the constriction of the everyday assault on our consciousness. And Shabbat is this resting place where we step back a little bit and take it in and get a vaster perspective on it all.